Welcome to CS171. This is an extension to Section 2. We'll cover some ideas around data joining, particularly nested data joining. That'll help you with homework 1 if you're stuck. So this, if you remember in Section 2, this is what we had. This is a bar chart. You'll notice, so here this is a bar chart indicating temperature. We're pulling data. This is what the data looks like. So each object has about a temperature and a location with a city and country. We have these recs that form the bar chart, and inside of each rec, there's a title. That title is how we tell the browser to do a tooltip like this. And in this section, our task was to write a filter functionality so that the bars would be filtered for US only temperature. Let's look at how we did that, and let's dig deeper into that. So this is what we had. You may recall, so this function right here, this entire function gets passed new data, filtered or expanded data when the checkbox gets declared. Essentially, our job is to write a function that given data updates the graph to match that data. So the first step there is to do this data join. We've talked about the data join might be a word that's still fuzzy to you. Every time you have this data call, this data function call, that's a data join. That means that we're selecting some rectangles and we're adding new data. And when that happens, we have to specify 3 things. We have to specify what we want to do with new data elements that are, if we have more data and they're not matched up with an existing rectangle. What we have to do with existing data that is matched up with a rectangle, and what we have to do with the with rectangles that are not matched up with any data at all. So that's the easiest. Typically what we want to do is remove. If we have rectangles that are not associated to any data, let's just get rid of them. They're not useful to us. And at this point, what we want to do is we want to ensure that rectangles that do have data, but their data has been updated, and new rectangles, their attribute gets set. So we want to make sure that their x and width and y and all these things are set properly. And we want to set them on both the enter and update. We want to make sure that both of them, for both new rectangles and old rectangles that are still hanging out, their attributes are set to something reasonable. So if you've seen this is how you would set that. In this case, I'll just scroll higher here in the text and copy how it's initially set. So if we move that here, you'll notice for both new and old rectangles, we're setting their fill, their width, etc., and making sure they're the right values. So notice that as we did this, we could also have different things for the specific to both the enter and update sets. But that's rare. You'll notice that typically this is exactly what we want to do. I'll clean this up a bit. Like this. This is a very common D3 pattern. We join the data, we append new rectangles, or new elements in general. We set the attributes of both the new and recently added, the new and recently added rectangles, and then remove the extra ones. This pattern is very common, and you'll likely use it in homework 1. So make sure to recognize when you need it. Let's save and see what it looks like. And as we select this US only, we get the desired effect. Nice. Not quite so. You'll notice these recs here, these recs that are not in the US that we're adding and removing and adding. We're not adding the title element to them. So if we try to hover over the bars at the bottom here, we're not getting anything. And this is the part where it gets a bit more tricky. Looking at their data, what we want to do is we need to do a data join inside the recs as well. So we did a data join at the level of the recs, but now we have to do a data join inside the recs to make sure to add a title when we need it, or to update the title, or to get rid of a title when we don't need it. So what we need to do is essentially exactly what we just did above. Let's call it var labels, and select inside the recs, we find all the titles, And then we say, well, titles, here are your data. And let's do exactly what we did right below. So let's do new data like this, and then we'll do follow that same pattern. Enter, append, and append a title, labels, and then we'd set. I'll do the same thing I did before. We'll just copy what we set up initially to initialize the graph. So set the text attribute to the city. Nope, not quite. And we'll get rid of the extra labels. Let's refresh and look at what we have. Let's click the button to make sure it does what we want. And then, oh, look at that. We have every city inside of the rectangle. Why is that? So if we look at the data, that's exactly what we're telling it. We're telling it, for inside every rectangle, bind all this data, and the data here is all the cities, all of them. And so it does exactly that, and it does the data join, and for every rectangle, it adds a title for every city there is, and manages the updated. So what we want to do really is we want to make sure that inside every rectangle, we only have the data for that particular rectangle. And you might have not noticed this, but it's possible to give a function to data. So data can take as an argument a function instead of just data. And let's look at that function. Just console.logging here. Let's refresh. And now let's toggle this. And you'll notice, ignore this error for now, and you'll notice that this is what you get. This is a particular sort. It's the particular city. So our function here is being called with a city. And this is really powerful. So what this function is doing, or what D3 is enabling us to do, is to access the data of the rectangle above it. So title is inside a rectangle, and now every title is being called with the data of the rectangle, and it's telling us, well, what do you want? What do you want labels? What do you want the data to be as a function of the data of your parent? In this case, so what we want here is we want just D. We want that particular city. So the rectangle represents a city, and inside of that is we want one title, so we want one element, and we want just that city. So D is a particular city. We want to just return the city. This is not going to work, unfortunately, because you'll remember in the first section, data expects something to be an array. It absolutely wants an array. And in this case, we're not returning an array. We're returning a particular city, not an array of cities. We have to make sure to return an array of cities. And we're just returning one. So you'll notice here we could return, if we returned an array that had 3 elements, then D3 would do exactly that. For every rect, it would add a title inside it would add 3 titles inside of the rect, bound to the first element, the second element, and the third element. But we only have one. So we remove that, and let's refresh. Click this US only, retoggle it, and we look inside of that, and that's being properly done. So as a quick recap, I know this is not obvious, and this is an easy thing to get stumbled on, particularly in the homework, but in general in producing visualizations with D3. We first do the join, then we enter an append, so that adds the required rectangles if necessary. Then we update all the attributes to both the new rectangles and the old ones, and we get rid of rectangles that are not associated with data. And then the second layer of that is we want to, if we have elements inside that primary element whose state need to be updated, we also have to do that data join at that level. And the way we do that in the case where we have only one element for each parent, we want to pass a function to data that just returns an array with that single element. So in this case, the parent is a city, and we want to return an array that contains only one city to make sure that we have one title that matches that city. And then we do the same idea. We append the title, we update the text attribute in this case to both the enter and update set and remove the extraneous labels. This is D3 nested data joins. This is a really powerful concept of D3. This is impressive. It's easy to get stumbled on, but it's one of those things that's very powerful and very expressive.